Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on another show. We have a special guest. His name is Stephen Leavitt, and he's a dynamic, creative entrepreneur, music producer, and podcaster. He's got a wonderful podcast called Language of Creativity, which we will talk about. And also, he's the founder of I Create Sound. With over 25 years of experience, Stephen excels in guiding artists and entrepreneurs to discover their authentic sound through music production, podcasting, and creative consulting. His do it together ethos and commitment to quality have made him a trusted partner in the creative process. As a host of the Language of Creativity podcast, which we were discussing on YouTube, Stephen explores the diverse challenges and inspirations that shape the creative journey, offering listeners valuable insights and inspiration. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I also liked when you said magician. I was thinking that's probably an easier way to access all that stuff. Yeah, I was glad to be on your show. Thanks, Chris.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Stephen. Nice to meet you. So, can we go back to the beginning to when you were younger and wanted to be an entrepreneur and a music producer?
Absolutely. So I was about 5 years old when I walked past the motorcycle under the Christmas tree and was looking for music equipment in the big Christmas boxes. And I think at that point, my parents realized that I was not going to go into the family business of motion picture stunts and competitive motorcycle riding. Instead, I took to the piano, and my mom had a Yamaha DX7 synthesizer,
Mm.
and so I would, play around with various sounds and ideas. And I had like a Shack tape recorder and microphones, and it just kept going and going. So from an early age, I knew I wanted to do music. And thankfully, I came from a family that said, go for your dreams.
Mm.
And so here I am, almost 30 years later. I'm still doing it, and I am helping other people realize their dreams as well of music, especially, but also now branching into helping people start their podcasts. And, you mentioned entrepreneurship. That's a real bug that I've had lately, realizing that most of us are now in business for ourselves, whether we like to be or not. So it's a harrowing journey, whether you're a beginning podcaster or you're starting an Etsy store, or whether you're even like releasing an album or working on something. It's like it feels like it's all the weight is on your shoulders, and you're alone, and you're in a room in front of a box, staring at a screen all day long. And it's really easy to get kind of turned around and lost. So I started the Creative Catalyst session for people to be able to, sort of get that like, creative collaborative feedback on, what they're working on. So I've had people ask me about their music projects. Is this mix good? Is it ready to put out? I've had people ask me about the early phases of their project. I've got this vocal and I can't get it to sound the way I want to. I've even helped beginning podcasters, like the Tips for Guitar Playing Success podcast, for example. We met at the NAMM show, and she's like, "Do you understand anything they're talking about?" I'm like, "I'll help you out." And so helped her get her mic sound up, helped her name her show, help her figure out how to get the, all the tech stuff going and the editing and all that kind of stuff. And, I find that, it lights me up to collaborate with people. So that's my gig now. But ironically, I did actually have a time where I worked in the movie business as well for a long time, and then so we can talk about that. I've gotten out of it by choice at this point. But I mean, if someone wants to call me for a national Super Bowl commercial, I will gladly take the paycheck. But podcasting, I love podcasting. I have a show called The Language of Creativity, and in that we interview creatives of all different kinds of art forms. And the idea is that, we're all suddenly in business for ourselves, and we're all having this creative life together, where I'm hoping that, a dancer can teach you something about music, or a musician can teach you something about painting. We're all in this, creative solopreneur, live your dreams lifestyle. And that's what I'm all about. So
Yeah, so when you said you got out of film business, what were you, like a producer, director, a film star, actor?
I was so my family. My mom is pretty much known as like one of the most famous stunt women in Hollywood. So her
Oh
name is
wow,
Debbie Evans. She's done over 400 TVs and movies. She's doubled Stephanie Zimbalist, Linda Hamilton, Michelle
really?
Rodriguez. What's her face? Married Angelina Jolie, on and
Wow.
on and on and on. And so everybody always used to tell me like how great my mom was, and I'm like, oh yeah, 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 sure, sure. So I did some stunts out of high school when I turned 18. You know, they're like, you look like high school students, so they'd hire me all the time for various things. And I decided, you know, that stunts wasn't for me. But when I got out of college, my mom hooked me up with one of her colleagues who worked on the TV show Chips, which
Oh
was the
nice.
California Highway Patrol with Eric Estrada.
Yeah.
And he would, you know, he did this thing they called Precision Driver, which was basically background traffic. And what you would do at that time, back in the 80s, 90s, like it was actually specialty drivers who would come in with their own cars and like make the freeway traffic. And, you know, the police cars and all the stunt cars would weave in out between them, and camera cars. And you have all these different, I mean, we've done all kinds of unique things. I kind
Wow.
of liken it to the Truman Show where the cars are driving in circles. You know, he goes to escape and the cars are like, and they suddenly come out of nowhere and create a traffic. That was my job for 12 years. So I worked on The Island with Michael Bay. I worked on Transformers. I worked on, John Hancock. I mean, we had the entire 105 freeway on John Hancock for forever. It was like, no, called Hancock with Will Smith, and you
Yeah,
know,
I love that one.
just parking our cars on the freeway, driving back and forth all day. I mean, I've had helicopters flying at me. I've had I've
Wow.
had what was it? What's the guy? Billy Bob Thornton driving a
Hmm.
car off PCH into Hollywood, where we have to like block all the other live traffic cars, and there's a camera vehicle with a guy hanging off the side shooting, and I mean, I've got some pretty crazy stories from that time, and also some pretty bad back problems from all the hours in the car, and then come home to my other job, which is music editing and music producing, and basically I had to take up walking and physical therapy full time
Mm.
after that. So, but yeah, so yes, the film business. I kind of grew up with the film business lifestyle. So, feast or famine. You don't. It's like you work. You make a bunch of money, and you're like, great, I have money, and then you're like, pay all your bills off, and you're like, when's my next job coming in? Um, and yeah, so I mean, I actually really love that lifestyle, and I think that's ultimately what kept me interested in entrepreneurship, was that I wanted to be in control of my own time. I
Mhm.
really didn't like the idea of being stuck in a dead end job. It was like the most terrifying thing to me. Not financial instability, not having health insurance. It was clocking in at a desk day in day out and
Wow.
waking up 30 years later realizing that I wasted my life. That was nothing to knock that, if that's your bliss, but for me it was like that was the scariest thing that I could, imagine. So therefore, entrepreneurship and business and music producing, it felt like a very natural fit. And, here I am still doing it years later. So
Well, your mom being a big star that she is, did she like, my son's going to be an actor? No, I'm not. You're going to be an actor. No, I'm going to get into music. I said you're going to be an actor. Was she like that, or she like, we'll be
actually,
happy, we'll support you just the way you want what you want?
quite the opposite. I loved theater as a kid, and she said,
Oh
"Great,
wow.
go do community theater,
Hmm.
go do school plays." I was a star in multiple school plays, but when it came to auditioning for acting roles, I
Hmm.
mean, she took me out on various stunt parts, little bit things, but when it came, she saw the moms that were the stage moms, and she goes, "Ooh, like this is pretty awful." And she had also worked with some young celebrities such as Leif Garrett, and
Oh yeah.
as we know from Behind the Music, and then it all went wrong. So she kind of saw the world of child acting, and she saw it as a really unhealthy environment. So to her credit, she said, "Steve, if you want to do acting, when you turn 18, that is a-okay. But right now,
Nice.
I am not going to put you into that world." And that's just how it was. So by the time I was 18, I mean, to be honest, I've never been too good of a performer. So, I mean, looking back in retrospect, I couldn't act my way out of a paper bag back then. And now that I'm a lot more self confident, I'm sure I do fine. It's just be yourself, just show up and be yourself and pretend to be someone else. No problem. But like, back then, I was really self-conscious, and I had a really hard time not looking at the camera. Actually, that was the hardest part, was that fourth wall thing. It was like, don't look at the camera, don't look at the So, I mean, for me, it was like the stage was great. I was really good at memorizing lines and all that kind of stuff. But now I have nightmares that I like am in a play and I forgot to study all my lines, and it's opening night, and then I'm like, oh no, so I'm pretty much that whole world for me has just kind of evaporated. And instead it's just, it's like, I love what I do. I love music, performing anytime I get to play on a record in the studio. I love coaching performances out of people and artists. And, it's sort of more like director for sound. That's how we would describe music producer. So even though I made indie films and, like little student films and things like that, what I really pursued was the music side of it. So
Yeah, what does your dad do for a living?
my dad so when he met my mom, he was a competitive motorcycle rider. He rode a sport called
Oh,
Trials. And
okay.
Trials, the way I pointed out, is like, it's as if it's scored like golf. So you're
Mm.
riding over obstacles, and every time you put your foot down, it's a point against. So you have like a maximum of 5. So
Oh, wow.
if you get no points, it's clean section. So it's scored like golf. And, it's the acrobatics of the motorcycle world. And so he was a competitive factory sponsored rider from a motorcycle company in Spain called Bultaco. And
Mm.
then this in the early 80s, he and my mom got married. I was born, and the sport got deprofessionalized in the United
Mm.
States. So it's still really big in Europe, but it became amateur. And he lost, basically, the factory went bankrupt. He lost his sponsorship. And
Oh.
the only thing he knew how to do was ride motorcycles. So, he kind of struggled for a while. He worked at Fox Racing designing shocks. And
Mm.
the funniest thing that happened was, because my mom had been in 1979 called to work on a Roger Corman movie through her dad, who was also in On Any Sunday, a competitive motorcycle racer. One of the local motorcycle shops had gotten word of Debbie, my mom, from a producer who was looking for someone who could jump a ravine on the movie Death Sport. And so it was, like the classic, she's working at Fedco, which is like Costco. And she gets a phone call like, do you want to be, well, I'm sure it was like somewhere, she had to go like return a call because they didn't have this. But she gets a phone call like, do you want to be in a movie? And she's like, yeah. And so she gets there and she's like, this is like getting paid to play. So the rest is history. She like worked on like, all these movies, and she almost won the CBS stunt competition as a girl. And in like 70s, it was like unheard of. So my dad and mom were together, and because of her, he was able to get roles in movies riding motorcycles. And this was the 80s when biker gangs were huge. So like
Mhm.
there was always in all these like kitschy TV shows, there were always motorcycle riders doing crazy stuff. So like there's footage of him on a bridge, like a railroad bridge in like Fillmore, on the
Mm.
railing of the bridge, wheeling the motorcycle on the railing of the bridge. And
Really?
yeah, so he got into stunts that way through motorcycling. And what he found out was, this was back in the cowboy days. Like everyone from this school was like, basically you take a hit of Vicodin, you throw down a whiskey, and you hit the ground as hard as you can. And you get back up again and you say, thank you, sir, may I have another? And the more harder you hit the ground, the more stunt adjustment money you get. And so that was the world he entered into. And he pretty much quickly decided, like, I don't like getting hurt. And he's kind of an engineer in mind. He's a really brilliant person. I would say he's probably, one of those people who doesn't do well in traditional school, but is really,
Mhm.
really, 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 really smart. And so, bad with structure and authority, and like great with everything else. So what he did was, he said, I have they basically had these things called ARAMs, which were these pneumatic catapults. And so a stuntman come and step on it and go and like fly
Oh,
them through the air.
wow.
And the
Like Evel
problem was,
Knievel.
yeah, well, and then the problem was is that these catapults, right? They were so rough that they were actually breaking people's legs. And my
Oh.
dad goes, I know how to design. They were just using these like pneumatic cylinders, and he's like, I know how to design racing shocks. And so he took his knowledge from Fox Racing, and he like developed. He renamed it, called the ARAM, for the air. He renamed it as the air ramp from the ARAM. And then he put these progressive throw shocks that were basically reverse pneumatic cylinders on these catapults, and suddenly people could do these stunts safely, and he could throw people further and further. So from there, he kind of kept tinkering in his garage, and he invented other things. He invented same thing, like a pneumatic arm that helped turn over a car, where normally what they do is they put a actual cannon inside of the car, welding it to the frame, and then shooting it through like a telephone pole through the floor of the car, and it
Really?
hits the concrete and it flips the car over. That's what
Oh,
you see
wow.
in like almost every movie when they turn over a car and then there's an explosion because they rig all the pyro and everything. Well, he developed one that actually stays inside the car and it doesn't destroy the street. And on and on and on. Then he looked at the work of Dar Robinson, who was a very famous stuntman who
Yeah.
developed he took the technology from the Germans, and when they do paratrooper training, and they would like have these spools of cable and these reels, and people could do like fake high falls with the
Hmm.
cable on their back. And so my dad looked at that, and when Dar Robinson died, he like went over and bought some technology from his widow, and he actually took the whole system and goes, this is really brilliant. And so he redesigned it so that instead of it just being one single size drum, the drum actually tapers down as the cable lets out. And then there's these fans on the side that actually slow down the rate of the
Mm.
fall, and it has brakes. So as the person's like, they look like they're in free fall, and when they get to the bottom, you just slow them down.
Wow.
So he basically, what my dad did was completely like invent the stunt rigging business, which now is just a thing that everybody does. But he, worked on some of the earliest Arnold Schwarzenegger movies like Commando, True Lies, Last Action Hero,
Wow.
on and
Yeah.
on and on. And he's even had Arnold fly on his devices. So I mean, and then of course in the early 2000s, I started helping him on music videos like with Janet Jackson. And, also
Nice.
he had MTV over to the house, and, I met Jennifer Love Hewitt, and on and on and on, and so like for a while, I actually helped him with a lot of what he did. And there was a time when he was one of the busiest stunt riggers in Hollywood. So, yeah.
Nice.
Hmm.
That's awesome. Wow. Thank you for sharing that information. So you started I Create Sound. What was the inspiration behind that, and why I Create Sound? Why not just call it Stephen Leavitt's production company or something?
I actually had something along those lines before, and it was just super lame. And I realized that, I needed something better. I had a friend who had a very good knack for naming companies, and he, first of all, with a web domain, you want it to be available, you want it to be easy to spell and memorable, and the other thing is that the name is really also to me is about not just I create sound, but so do you.
Mm.
And so that was kind of where that came from. In 2015, I had done a number of independent records, and I realized that because a lot of people were making their own records at home, and maybe they were doing, for cost reasons, doing a large portion of that alone, I wanted a way for someone to be able to call a producer and hire them for like a day or
Hmm.
just for an hour to like say, hey, listen to my mixes. What's up with this? Is it ready to go? And so, yeah, in 2015, I kind of like added that to my roster. I started, kind of creating the brand for I Create Sound. And it sort of evolved over the years. I use it a lot now for my production company work. And as I've had to, go through the process of creating a company and doing all that kind of stuff, the brand has really shifted because I realized that through helping creatives of all types and through interviewing creatives of all types with my podcast, I've actually helped people with more than just audio in these
Mm.
creative catalyst sessions. I've actually, one of my friends from coffee sat down with me. He's like, I need a session with you. And she said, I'm writing this book and I'm really stuck. And so we had a 1 hour session and I turned her on to Trello. I'm like, you should know Trello if you're getting work. And she just went to town with it. And within 3 months, she had written all 3 books. And
Wow.
I'm not going to take credit for that, but I mean, it was like, it's a testament to the fact that sometimes you need to have someone to reflect an idea with and to really
Hmm.
workshop with. And so, yeah, I mean, I've helped people start podcasts. I've helped people with, their businesses. I've helped people with all kinds of things. And so, I Create Sound really still is, right now we're kind of working on this idea of a producer for a day. So what's been great is in the LA area, if you're working on something, I can actually come to your studio for, 3 to 6 hours. And, we sit down and we work on your track. And often just sometimes that collaborative energy, because music is a collaborative process, but we've come into this area where because you can do everything yourself, you end up doing it yourself by default. And it just sometimes creatively, there's nothing to vibe on. So I find that I thrive on collaboration, and that this is a way for people to have access to someone with a lot of experience. Sometimes it's just, that one phone call can, months of headache and dead ends, can just sort of like get you going. So that's why I create sound, and that's why you create sound.
That's amazing. So how do you help artists discover their authentic sound? What's the process for that?
So, I mean, a lot of people don't get the advantage of artist development anymore. So, one of the things that labels used to do is you'd sign a new act, and then they'd, have someone actually work with them and help them, craft their sound and, their songwriting and things like that. So I wouldn't say I'm in the artist development business, but I would definitely say that's an underutilized part of a creative process, is the sort of mentorship process. So I would say that, what I like to do is, pretty much as a producer, if someone brings me something and it's here, I hear where it's wanting to go. And so like, I can't help it. I'm going to take it here. If someone brings me something here, I'll take it here. If someone brings me something here, then I actually get really excited, because then I get to challenge myself and take it, to here. And so it really doesn't matter what it is. I have a lot of friends that I joke, I tend to attract a lot of friends and colleagues who have what I call the producer skill set. So that's not just, I don't mean just music. I mean like even movie producers. The thing about producers is they're the kind of person who, if they don't know something, they know who does. And they also know enough about this something to know the difference between someone who knows something and who doesn't. So they've got someone in their Rolodex. They know who to call the person to call, and we can get anything done. So I think that's the advantage of being with someone. I mean, I think there's a book by Malcolm Gladwell where he calls them mavens, the people who just happen to have knowledge about everything. And for me, like, I resonate with the idea of being a polymath. So that's one of the things that just happens, is like, I don't even know how I know certain things, but I can sit down with someone and just sort of like get insight into like what they're doing. And they're like, I've had clients that's like, oh my God, like, we work together, and it's like all of a sudden I'm getting these downloads for like the things I'm going to be doing for the next 6 months. And we just have like 1 hour session. So, it's just, I guess, just a knack or whatever you want to call it. But, that's a big part of the process. I mean, really the process depends on, what you're trying to make and what you're working on. I mean, obviously in music production, there are certain things that you're always going to do. Like, people are working on a demo or a song they think is a track in Logic or Fruity Loops or FL Studio or whatever. And, they'll be working on it. And there's a lot of different parts of the puzzle. It's like, if you have something with a vocal on it, is the performance capturing the essence of you? Is it a good vocal performance? Is it a good mic sound? Is it also reflective of like your range, your vocal register? Oftentimes it'll be just like, this is an awesome song, but it would really sound better if we transposed it up or down. Sometimes it's even up because you have a break in the middle of your voice. And a lot of people really try and sing at the limit of their ability. And, sometimes you can just like move it into a more comfortable key, and then the world just opens up. And, so it's about having the knowledge. I actually had a client recently who, he brought, like, one of the first things we did, because I'm working on his whole record, is he came to my studio and sat down and he played all his demos on the guitar. And he had some things where he was kind of throwing this kind of like really bluesy sound effect on his voice, just kind of doing a little kind of thing. And I was like, hey, okay, I drew this little thing, and I was like, okay, so here's your affect, right? And here's this bar. And like, you're like, if this is the middle, sorry, let me do the screen. If this is the middle and this is no effect and this is like all the affect, you're like right here. Could you dial it back to right here? And he did that. And he's like, Steve, you're right. He's like, that sounds way better. And so I didn't tell him like, what you're doing is awful. Don't do that. It was like, no, this is cool, but it's too much. So, and he's like, he told me, he's like, that's how I knew you were my producer, because you would tell me those things that no one else would tell me. And it was helpful. It wasn't judgy. It was actually really, something I could do something with. So ultimately, like I'm not trying to change your sound. I'm trying to help you uncover your sound.
What's the most rewarding part of your work?
Oh man, when I get to hear a record that I've been listening to in my head for 6 months or a year, because when I come in and do demos with people, or when I listen to demos with people, often I start to hear the music in my head like completed. And so I'm almost like in this process of reverse engineering what I heard in my head to what's actually playing on the disc or the CD or the record master. And so I think that's my favorite thing, honestly, is I mean, just I have what I like to call a phonographic memory.
Hmm.
So, like I used to when I was skiing, I used to listen to, I didn't have a Discman on me in the 90s or whatever. I would just like in my head play my favorite records from start to end.
Oh,
So
wow.
I think that's like for me. And then lately, what's cool is that it's actually the records that I've been doing have started exceeding what I heard in my head. And that's cool.
Of course. So, um, what can you share with us a memorable moment from your career that significantly impacted you?
I was recalling a moment when I met Bill Murray. I was a big fan of Ghostbusters. I was probably
Mm.
8, 7, 8 years old, something like that. And of course, it was Venkman. I think it was Venkman. I don't even know anymore. I've forgotten about it. But it was this funny thing. My mom was working on Ghostbusters 2, and she was, she was like, "This is, Bill. This is my son Steven." And he looks at me and he goes, "Steven, Steven, isn't that a dog's name?" And I was so confused because this is Bill Murray, humor. And I just like, as a kid, I was like, well, huh? But you asked about my favorite moments from my career. Which career are you talking about? Are you talking about like the precision driving moving career? Are you talking about the music career, producing? What do you think?
Yep. Let's stick with your current position with I Create Sound. What's the most memorable moment from that career?
So there were two really ones that stand out. One was in 2018 when we were finishing the mix of Beautiful Light. We took it to a studio in Altadena with this gentleman named Rich Mauser, who's an incredible progressive rock producer in his own right, and he actually helped me co-produce the project. And my friend and client who paid for the record basically and decided to trust me on this big process that we were doing. I have this picture of him just sitting back and listening to the final mix of his magnum opus, which people in reviews have called a masterpiece.
Wow.
And he's just got this look on his face like he's just absolutely in bliss because this he's like almost crying. That I by far stands out as one of my very favorite moments of my career. Another one was when we were working on his second full album in 2021. I was working on, he had a project called You Have It All. And the Rich said, hey, we need some piano on this. Will you go play piano? And I was like, of course, it was my favorite track on the record. So like, yeah, I'd love to. And I don't know like what had been, kind of working through me at that point creatively, but I think I had really gotten into the idea of getting out of the way as a, because I've played for years, but I don't practice and I don't play live anymore. So, I've
Mm.
often felt like, sort of like with the camera where it's like, I'd be a little stiff or I'd, want to play this, but my fingers would fall over. So with this one, I just decided to like kind of show up and just see what happened. And so I literally got in there, the music's playing. It's the climax of a, 15-minute epic masterpiece. And I just started to play and I didn't think about it. I just opened up and it was like this music just came through me. And when I walked into the control room, both Rich
Wow.
and Adam were jaws on the floor being like, Steve, that was out of this world. And it, to this point, is one of their favorite parts on the record as well. And so just being like a vessel for that creative moment, I think that's what, actors like Jim Carrey talk about when they channel a
Hmm.
role. It's just sort of like you get out of the way, you just let whatever, universe consciousness just sort of open up and like, okay, whatever this song is meant to be, I'm just going to play it. I'm just the vessel. And, the other thing I had to do to get myself to that point was to realize, I used to be really over preparer. And what I started telling myself when I show up to work now is I just, especially like even the precision driving thing, it's been like 6 months since I had a job. And it'd be like as if I forgot how to drive. And that's total bullshit, right? I'm like, of course, I know what I'm doing. I can hit a mark. I can stop on a dime and within, within a half an inch of blah, blah, blah with a car. But there's always those nerves, right? And so I started telling myself this. I say, the only thing I need to bring is myself.
Mm-hmm.
And what that says to me is like, I already carry all the knowledge and experience that I've given myself over my lifetime within me. And so I don't need to like try and like premeditate it. I can just like relax, let go, and just show up. And people want to work with me. They want what I bring. And so, yeah, I would say, two of my all-time standout favorite experiences were on the Leavitt Scarp record. We ended up, that Beautiful Light, the first one I told you about, did end up from the EP onto You Have It All, which was Leavitt Scarp's second record. Absolutely, one of the best moments of my career.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
Wow. What motivates you to keep pushing the boundaries in your field? Like, what motivates you?
Well, I think it's the sense that this is my life purpose. I feel like music is what I was born to do. And I don't know how I knew that, but I just always sort of did from an early age. Like that's what I gravitated towards. I had a family that was able to like say, yeah, do that. And, it hasn't been easy. Like I said, when I got out of music recording school, like there was no music industry left for years, but somehow I still stick with it. So, that and helping people, I think the idea that, a lot of my clients really consider me a friend. They consider me an inspiration. And I mean, I just hope that I can, do that, anytime I show up to a project. Like I want to add value. I want to help people achieve their dreams. And that for me is because, I think that's what we're doing here. I mean, I think, and if I can play a small part in helping someone realize a dream that's just in them, like it's you trying to come out. And that to me lights me up. That gets me out of bed in the morning.
Yeah, there's a YouTube channel called Wings of Pegasus and the host is Phil Headley,
I'll have to check
and
that out.
he does a lot of reactions to videos, and he uses a software which can detect pitch correction.
Mm-hmm.
And mostly, a lot of the music in the industry is all pitch corrected. It's not like just sing, leave your vocals the way
Yeah.
they are. Why do you have to pitch correct? And he had reacted to many of the biggest musicians. That one actually reached out and told them off until finally, after a little while, he said, "Yeah, okay, you're right. It was pitch corrected." But you got these bigwigs. I won't give their names, but you got these bigwigs in the music industry where you have to pitch correct your voice, and he can determine it by saying, "Look." He's got this big English accent. Look, it's all pitch corrected. If you
Mm.
listen to this Beatles tune, and stuff like that, it's really check it out. Wings of Pegasus, Phil Henley.
I'll
It's
check that
really.
out. I have a lot of opinions about that.
Mhm.
I like to say that in 2006, Adele single-handedly saved the music industry from autotune.
Really.
Because she was one of the ones is like everything from, if you listen to it, everything from 2001 to like 2005, 2006 was like auto-tuned to hell. And you could hear it. It's like not to the point where it's like a cool effect like Cher or T-Pain, but to the point where it was just like it sucked all the life out of everything. In fact, late producer who I was good friends with, Mandy Martin, produced an amazing record with this one guy. And but she spent all this time, in autotune working with him, and I can't listen to the record. It's like probably her final work. It's such a great record, so many great songs, but it was a product of its era. And I really feel like once Adele came out, it was like someone with a real voice, with real talent, and not that the people who were autotuned didn't have real talent, but there was a lot in digital production. There's a lot of things you can cheat and fudge. And here's the trick. I've worked with some artists who really don't have the best vocal support, but that doesn't matter. I can get you to sing with punch-ins what I need from you, with the emotion, with the pitch. And then, yeah, I do sometimes do a little bit of tuning, but when I do tuning, unless it's EDM, I don't just put it on auto. I actually tune by ear. So I'll go in Melodyne and
Mm.
I'll take the performance and, kind of like bring it to where it wants to go. And I don't put it right on the pitch line. I actually I tune by ear and I tune per open scales. So like if the guitars have a more of an open tuning to them, that's where the vocal's going, and also same thing with violins and other things, sometimes actually the higher you go in the pitch,
Yeah.
the more you want to actually bring it just a hair sharp, to make it sound more open. And, I mean, to me, that's, I mean, I've also heard other producers that say the number one job of a musician is to be in tune, which is also true. One of the worst things is like working on a guitar session where you spend, you'll have to spend forever tuning the guitar just to get it right on. But, there's so many different things. I mean, one of the things they used to do in the 80s is just bury it in reverb. A lot of those tracks, you think they're good, but, they just put all kinds of delay and reverb on it, and you can't ever tell that they're out of tune. And that's the thing. Like, I think the 70s, like you said, there was so many good artists back then that just could really sing, and they just, Freddie Mercury style. And, it wasn't an issue. And, I think that my perspective is what are you trying to do with it? Like some people are not trained musicians and they're trying to get out a song for their, their grandmother or their loved one or something like that. And they want to get it to a point where people can listen to it, where the tuning's not in the way of the song being heard. And I think at that point it's great to use the tools. And but ultimately I'm a fan of sing it for real, punch it in. If you can't hit that one note in that one spot, just sing the whole song through,
Hmm.
get the vibe and the feeling in that one spot. I'll coach you through how to hit that note. Maybe you just need to like move into your head voice a little bit more at that place, and then we'll punch it in, we'll make it fit, and then we'll do a little tune to it. But for me, if you can hear it's tuned, then someone messed up. Like it really needs to feel like emotional, like it really needs to feel human. And I think that's the thing about the human voice is like look at tonal languages like Chinese, where actually the inflection in the voice is what creates the meaning. And I feel like it's the same way with music. It's like someone who doesn't speak English could hear a song in English, but because of the way that it's an inflected feeling, that actually creates the experience for the listener. So I would say, don't kill the experience with the
Yeah.
tools.
If you actually want to hear some purist vocals, on YouTube they have the video of Grace Slick back in the day when she was singing White Rabbit, and they removed the music, and you get these pure vocals only of Grace Slick, and it's really beautiful. I'm like, why do you need to pitch correct that? Like you're listening to Taylor Swift. I bet you anything she's in Toronto right now for the Eras tour, and I bet you anything that she's not even singing live. She chose the songs and she's lip syncing to everything, because even
I
with
know
Britney
some artists
Spears,
do. I can't speak to Taylor, but that
yeah,
was always.
and they have the
Um,
little microphone that fits here, this flesh
mhm.
colored microphone, and you have Britney Spears dancing and singing "Hit Me, Baby, One More Time," and you try to sing something like that and dance at the same time, you'd be like, "Hit me,
That's what I
baby."
learned working with Janet Jackson. This is the only time I ever got starstruck, by the way. I was 22 and we were at the Universal backlot, which by the way, in its own sense is a weird experience because you got the tour buses driving through and it's like
Oh,
being in a fishbowl and everyone's like, who's that? They must be really important. You're like, I'm nobody. And, so anyway, so we're working on this. I think it was, Mick G, music video, and the first thing that happened, well, I can't say it's Mick G because I don't think it was this Korean guy who was like really big at the time. The first thing that happened was we show up and there's this huge 25 foot tall set that they spent tons of money building, and the director walks in and goes, I don't like it. And they just scrap the whole thing. And so we go to this other stage and do this other thing that they
really?
built.
Oh, all that money
And
wasted.
yeah, so we had, I know, and that's the business, right? They I had a friend call me and say, "Hey, do you want some wood floors, like real wood?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't need wood floors." He's like, "They're gonna go in the dumpster." Because I just wrapped this show and he's in the art department. And there's like,
Oh
and
my
there's like things like
goodness
this all the
gracious.
time. There's so much like stupid money, right? So anyway, Janet Jackson, one of the largest pop stars in the world, and they're doing this choreographed dance on a gimbal, which means a platform that tilts forward, back, side to side. And my dad's job was to safety the performers so they wouldn't go flying off the front. And so anyway, so this is like a 22-hour shoot. That's the other thing about music videos. The hours are crazy. So we're sleeping on the porta pits and, on and on. The whole time Janet's dancing and doing all this stuff. And like, man, she can dance. And, she's got to be just as good. She's got to be better than all these professional dancers who were in their prime, that his job is to make her look good. And she's doing it. And, I realized how athletic it is and how hard it is to actually sing. Like Pink is one who can do it, dance and sing and do the whole thing. Like it is athletic. So the point of my story is that, I'm, I forget where I was going, but I'm going to the stage door, and across the stage watched Janet Jackson. And she's by herself, she's just walking to wherever. And normally I don't think twice, like my grandma said, they put their pants on like everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, when I was like 10 feet from Janet Jackson, suddenly this thought entered my head. Holy crap, this person is known by everyone in the world. Like everyone in the world knows who this is. And I was starstruck. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't even a Janet fan at that point. Like I didn't listen to her music or anything. I knew who Michael was and stuff like that. But I was just like, yeah, she's famous, whatever. But I was just bowled over. And of course, I left and didn't say anything to her. But yeah, I mean, like, when it comes to singing and dancing, I mean, you have to realize at some point you're putting on a show. So there's different kinds of music. There's, you get the folk music where it's about, the performance and the nuance and the vibe, and it's different every time. And you get the pop music, like the, Swedish pop produced, Britney Spears kind of thing. It's for a whole nother thing. It's for a whole nother audience, and it is a show. So, I mean, if you're putting on a show and people love it, more power to you. And, I think it's just, that's another thing is like in the art form is like, really, what are you trying to do? Who's your audience? What are you shooting for? And what are you making? Because, I mean, there's a lot of things that we cheat in the movie business that don't really happen. As the whole stunt industry exists to double people and say, oh, yeah, they're doing this action sequence, and really it's, they're the person who's, just has to sit around and have makeup spritz their hair all day. It's just an interesting thing. We live in a world of make believe, and but on the other front, like one of the things I really appreciate about music is the fact that artists, especially music artists, really do either in their songwriting or in their performances often really connect with some of the deepest parts of the human experience. And so I feel like I'm a midwife for that. Like I'm a midwife for that creative vibe, whatever it was that someone wrote a song that meant a lot to them. And my goal is to protect that idea or that song and help it be born as something that's going to touch the lives of the people who hopefully are listening to it.
Yeah, I don't even know who would go to school to become a stuntman. Like, wasn't Tom Cruise in the beginning a stuntman and he decided to get into acting? That's why he does his own stunts.
I
But I
know
don't even
that Tom
know.
Cruise actually really does do his own stunts, and I mean, the fact that he looks as young as he does now really says something. He must be really in good shape, but I just don't. It's funny because there's this debate in the stunt community if stunt schools are legit. Like basically, most of the time, it's kind of like in music, like going to engineering school, doesn't make you an engineer. It just means that you went to school and paid too much money. Same thing with stunt school. It's like it doesn't guarantee you a job. The things that get you a job in the stunt business are like you're second, third generation, or you're the top at your field. You're like, you're doing diving things for Red Bull, and they need someone who can dive like crazy into this crazy small thing. Like you do a sponge. And, or, just the fact that you're all around great at everything and you look like an actor and you just happen to, work your way up and pay your dues and, work your way up from like, the Batman stunt show to like, to like, and you meet people who meet people and you hustle and you do all those things and you work hard. It usually takes 10 years. I have friends who've asked me, Steve, can you help me get in the business? And I say, well, I try and do everything I can to dissuade them. And then I'm like, when I see someone was really, dedicated and talented, I'd be like, okay, like I will introduce you. But, it's rare and it's hard and it's a very, very elite, tight-knit group of people. And, even more so is that thing of like who you recommend. being like really important on your reputation, because if someone recommends you for a stunt and you can't do it, you could get killed. You could get someone else
Mm.
killed. And so that's why I think I learned from an early age that you don't mess around with that kind of stuff. You really, if you recommend someone for something, that's your reputation on the line. And, but yeah, so.
Yeah, I was telling another actor about this, and she thought it was great. This guy, he hires himself out as a dead guy. So what he does is he has like photos of him.
Weekend at
Any
Bernie's.
way possible you could die. He just has himself like with the car getting hit. He has a knife stab. He wants to be the dead guy in the film.
Oh my
So when
gosh.
and it was great. It's awesome. And he gets hired for like you want someone got hit by a car, I'll be the guy. If you want someone to jump off the building and end up on the pavement and there's blood all over him, just put me down on the pavement and put blood on. Like that's what he does. It's amazing.
Oh
Um.
my gosh, there's a stuntman that you have to have on here named Sean Kinney. He would be
Oh yes,
great because he's
sure.
actually, so he's a consultant for indie filmmakers, and he does a lot of things for filmmakers, indie filmmakers, and people who want stunts on their things. He's also a professional clown,
Oh
and
wow.
but I mean, he'll tell you when that can go really wrong. Like, there's a lot of people who try and say, "Oh yeah, I can do a car hit," but they don't know the first thing of what they're doing. First of all, we don't do car hits at 30 miles an hour. We do them at 5 to 8 miles an hour,
Mm,
and 8 is fast, and you could get really jacked
yeah.
up doing that. And the other thing is, you don't just like get hit by the car. You actually have to roll a certain way, like onto the hood. There's a
Actually,
certain way you roll off.
there's a YouTube channel called Film Riot, and it's by a guy named Ryan Connolly, and he tells you how you can get an actor get hit by a car, make it look real. All he does is he films the car going fast, and then he films a guy in there, and all he says, and then he puts a rope around him, and just throws him back, and they put it together like this. So it's really
That's
interesting.
exactly the kind of things that my dad used to do. I mean, they call them jerk ratchets, where like they have like a limit line and they'd run at
Hmm.
something and then they go boom and they'd bounce
Hmm.
back. There's all kinds of different cool little tricks that you can do. The other thing is the way stunt people pad up. You don't really realize that when stunt people hit the ground that they've got an entire stunt bag that's giant,
Mm.
full of like all these little kinds of pads that they've collected, like for their hip, for their butt, for their tailbone, for their ribs, like in as much padding as the wardrobe will let you get away with. It's even sometimes like, my mom will put this stuff called moleskin on her hands. So it's like if she knows she's going to have to go to the ground, it's just this flesh colored little like, pad that sticks to your hand. And that's, you protect yourself as best you can because, I
Mm.
mean, the next job may be tomorrow and you may be pretty jacked up and you want to make sure that if you're going to be asked to hit the ground like 14, 15 times, that
Hmm.
you are going to be able to last and go the distance. So,
Yeah. So, whatever made you transition from music production to podcasting? Well, what challenges did you face? Like, for instance, language or creativity. How did that come to be?
So this is a funny story. So I was working on that same EP, and I was with my friend, and we had been editing guitars for like a week straight. So he comes in one day to the studio, and that's, by the way, one of my life hacks is like, just work together with someone. Like if you're having trouble slugging through something, just have a friend hang out with you while you're doing it. So anyway, we're there, and basically, I was kind of not wanting to edit guitars that day. So I said, "Hey, Adam, before we edit guitars, do you want to record a podcast with me?" And he's like,
Mm.
"Sure. What's it about?" And I'm like, "Well, I think it's about blah blah blah, but I don't know yet." And so, basically I was procrastinating from guitars. And one of the most creative things of my career had just kind of came out of like a positive procrastination. So we sit down and, he says, so, yeah, what's your show about? You want to talk about this? You want to talk about life, creativity, metaphysics? I was like, what about the language of creativity? And this is within the first 60 seconds of rolling the tape. He names the show and encapsulates everything as if it just came from like the heavens, encapsulates everything about the show. We had this brilliant conversation. You can go look it up. It's our first episode with Adam Sears. And, we basically, he talks about a lot of what you guys talk about. He's an actor as well. He's a musician and, he's going to, visit his grandma in Arizona, and he gets a phone call. And the phone call's for the MTV Movie Awards spoof for The Matrix, and they're like, "Can you be
Really?
in LA tomorrow?"
Wow.
And he's halfway to Phoenix, and he's like, "Yes, I can." And so he has to turn around, get to LA, and like he spends all day on this shoot, and he gets to be on. It turns out it's the MTV Movie Awards spoof.
Wow.
And then of course, the funny part was like I know all the lines from that spoof, so it's like it's just great. It was so much fun, and I realized how much that had been something from early on, like radio and speaking had been something early on that was inside me that I knew I probably wanted to do one day, but I just never had pursued. So podcasting was just a natural fit. And it also turns out that podcasting is great networking. I've ended up working with a lot of the people that I've had on the show. And, it's a great way for people to get to know you, especially if you're in a career like mine that's people based. And if you want to check out my podcast, it's thelanguageofcreativity.com. And you can also look for The Language of Creativity wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, on and on. We are on YouTube, but it doesn't have all the shows up yet because we were going to release them one by one back catalog. And
Oh, how many
then
do you have that you
YouTube,
need
and
to
then Google
upload?
decided to move Google Podcast to YouTube. So
Oh,
I've got to
yeah.
get on. We're working on getting everything up to date and current with that. But yeah, you can
You
check
must
us
still
out
have a
there.
lot. Do you have a lot pending?
Yeah, actually, we're up to episode, I think 13 has been released on the YouTube. And so
Yeah.
you can go back and see episode 1 with Adam Sears. You can
Yeah.
see my episode with Chris Alchico, who actually was auditioning at the time I interviewed him to be in a symphony orchestra around the world. He trained with Bert Hara from the LA Philharmonic, and he was still in the
Wow.
process of going through. And within a year of that interview, he actually got hired for the Boston Symphony Orchestra. So that's like our most downloaded episode of all time. So that's on there as well. And
Nice.
we'll be releasing more. We're going to start like going bananas with the YouTube shorts and back clips and things like that. But basically, yeah, you can check us out there as well. And that links also to, we have a Substack as well if you want to join the mailing list or you want to support the podcast. But yeah, I mean, right now, one of my favorite interviews was with the second unit director from Fast and Furious franchise.
Mm.
So that's a good one.
Wow.
And that one you can only get right now on audio. So that one's not on YouTube, but if you find us on, the other platforms, it's not too hard to find. So
Yeah, we had a lady by the name of Michelle Glogovac, and what she does is she gets people on podcasts, and she said you have to come up with EPK, and then she got so many people on different podcasts, and I'm like, I don't know how many podcasts you were on, but ever since I started this podcast 3 years ago, I've only been on one, and I'll be on my second one in 3 weeks. There's podcast hosts who've been on like 20, 30, 40, 50 podcasts. And I'm like, how come I'm only on one? How come I can't get myself out there?
well,
Oh,
it's interesting because I've got a long list of guests. My team is like, oh, we should like put out a feeler for guests, and I'm like, I got plenty of guests. I know a lot of people. I know a lot of really interesting people. I said, that's not, I need to get on other shows. So I appreciate the opportunity, Chris, for you to have me on. This has been an absolute pleasure. And, I wish you the best and, success for your show as well. It's great that we can do this. It's great that we can connect with
yeah.
people remotely. I was just talking to Robert from another podcast, the Free Time Mastermind podcast, and I was just saying, now is a time where you can literally like connect with anyone in the world, and
Yeah.
recently had the opportunity to meet some of those that I had met over the pandemic when we were all the lockdown, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's just incredible, and some of these people I've actually met in real life, and for some really good connections and creative thing. There's always someone to collaborate with. There's always someone, and I think the energy of collaboration is one of the things that blossoms creativity. So that's my message. That's what I'm here to promote. You can do certain things yourself, but when it really comes down to it, let's do it together. So
How do you get the people? Do they reach out to you, or do you find like a list of say entrepreneurs? It gives you a whole bunch of lists, emails, and then you email them, or do they come to you?
well, most of the guests that I'm reaching out to, I have a rather large network of creative people that I know throughout my life. So I just kind of like think about like who I'd like to interview and about what topic. And, I know people but I've had a few reach out to me. One of them was a creativity coach named Lauren Spangler. Her interview was really recent, and that was a great one. And she
We
turned
just
out to
had
be a
her like
great
a couple
guest.
months ago.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
Lauren
right. I
Shanger.
forgot about that. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Someone told
she
me
was,
that, and I
she was
was gonna check
great.
her. She was awesome, and
Yeah.
we had the best connection. So I met her for virtual coffee before we,
Hmm.
ever. And I said, look, I mean, the thing about my show is I don't do self promotion, and we talk about it at the end. But like, I really want to go into your story. I really want to hear about what makes you tick as a creative. What were your struggles? Like those kind of things. And I find the funnest thing about my podcast, actually, I don't prepare very much. I basically just go in and just start a conversation, and tangents are allowed and encouraged. So we'll talk about all kinds of things. And I always love when sometimes the conversations come full circle, like, having Lauren on the show, and you're just like, oh my gosh, like we didn't plan to talk about that, but it brought it all in perfectly. It's pretty
Yeah,
great.
and she had a couple of albums put on. She's got a really good voice, and then yet she decided to put that all aside. I mean, she still does music, but she decided to put that all aside and do something totally different, which is okay.
There
I
was a
mean,
really beautiful moment in the podcast where I asked her about a song that she didn't plan on talking about. It was called the Graveyard Song.
yeah,
And it turns out I didn't know this, but I had picked the song that was about her father who died when she was about 20. Well, about
yeah,
my age actually. He was about 42, and I was just floored that was the song that I picked. And it turned out that it kind of brought the episode full circle, because we started about talking about her records and how she had quit
mm,
music because it was just not economically sustainable, which I think is a totally relatable topic for our audience. And it was like, now there's something stirring within her to maybe pick up music again. And so, I basically made the point that it's like we can compost these things that we made all those 20 years ago, and that can
yeah.
actually, people hear this now for the first time. I'm hearing this song now for the first time, and I started crying because I have a family member who's going through a life or death situation. And it was
Oh,
like, it's just like this really beautiful moment. And so always remember that your art can touch people, even if it's something you did in high school, right? There's still
mhm.
something that can be useful from that. And our lifetimes are these creative patchworks of, so don't ever think that just because I made a record 2 years ago, I mean, if no one's heard that record, then maybe people still want to hear that record. You might be tired of it, but the world might not be. So, and there, yeah, there is a time to lay things to rest and then maybe pick them up again. So, but yeah,
Yeah. Does it take you long to prepare for a podcast interview?
I don't prepare. I have another podcast called the Spaceship Earth Mission Log, where I interview
Oh,
guests that I don't know, and this is in the regenerative, like, climate and
really?
planetary space. And yeah, I was inspired by the Buckminster Fuller Institute. I did a what was it? There were like these things called Space Camp, where you would learn from, like, for instance, one of the teachers, he won the X Prize for developing these
Wow.
platforms of floating kelp that help restore coastal upwellings. I mean, just crazy bananas, cool stuff like this, right? We met another guy who his business partners designed 43% efficient solar panels, which the market ones are like 23%.
Wow.
And he's trying to get a factory together. It's like crazy stuff. And it was really, really inspiring, right? So for those, I definitely had to do a lot of reading up, and I kind of got my host hat a little bit more like
Mhm.
experience. They're also on video, which my other podcast is not. But, I mean, to be honest, I do as minimal research as possible on my guests because I want the conversation to be fresh. Sometimes when I do them in person,
Mhm.
if I give someone a ride, I'll be talking on the way there and they'll start bringing something up. I was like, hey, no offense, but I want to save this for the show. Let's not talk about it yet. Because I really do want it to come out like the first time that we're both hearing it and react to that thing. So, I mean, for me, again, it's about that connection. And for me, that just creatively lights me up. It makes my whole music world so much more vibrant, having podcasts and connecting with people. But I'm a connector and I'm a social person. So for me, like, a life hack is going to coffee in the morning where I can run into people. I think I was always
Yeah.
too isolated as a creative before. And I think, to me, podcasting is just it's FaceTime. It's creative connection. And so yeah, that's what I do. I mean, now if I get a cold read, like with Lauren, I did do quite a bit of research into her music and a little bit of research into kind of what she had out professionally. So I understood at least like what I could talk about. And I did listen to her. I listened to both her records, which was cool. That's actually something I do when I work with an artist. I say, what are your like 5 or 6 favorite CDs that you're influenced by right now? And I'll just, like, before I start the record, I'll just listen to all of them on
Hmm.
repeat, just so I can kind of like get an idea of like what inspired you to make this. And it's cool. That's the way I discover music too. So yeah, with Lauren, I did do a little research because I didn't know her at all before, but I just tend to get a sense, of like what people are about. And there's always a meta thread that weaves through the episodes. I actually don't name the episodes until after I record them.
Oh. Hmm.
And that's actually one of the most creative parts about the episodes is naming them. So with Lawrence, it was creative composting, which just happened to be this full circle that was drawn around it. And sometimes, like I kind of know going into with Spiro Rosatos, I knew it was going to be a Fast and the Furious going into it, but then it was kind of hard to come up with a name that didn't say Fast and Furious. What I ended up did was I called it Friends Like Family, which is kind of from the show. And, like they're all about family, Dom Toretto's, family. And really, we are family. It's like he's friends with my dad. They've worked on a ton of each other's movies, and I go play video games at their house, like, and my son does too now. And it's like, and he like kind of looks after, like, if his stuntman friends, like their kids are now going to college and have become doctors and things like that. And it is a family. So, I mean, that was the perfect title for the episode. But it also, like, from an SEO perspective, it says Fast and Furious without saying Fast and Furious, right? So, very creative.
Yeah, well, what advice would you give to someone starting in the creative industry? Like, they want to be a podcaster, they want to be a music production, they want to be a musician, whatever. What kind of, maybe we shouldn't say generic advice, but what would you tell them to get them, as you'd say, started to become
First of
authentic?
all, like we live in a time where you can learn anything. That's the number one. I mean, there's masterclass.com if you can ask for that for Christmas or your birthday or Hanukkah or whatever. And then there's also YouTube. I mean, you can learn anything you want on YouTube. Make art, do your own projects, like try stuff, collaborate with people. And, at the beginning, it's going to be hard because you don't know anybody. But I would, if you find someone who's accessible, who's a good person that you think is a good mentor, reach out to them, ask them if they're, if they need help with something or if they, they can sit down with you and learn from
Hmm.
them. I mean, ultimately, one of my first mentors wasn't even in music. One of my first mentors with my first job was Wendy Vanguard, who worked at the Eames office when she first started and like painted quirks for Powers of 10. And she was a award-winning broadcast designer. So what did I do? I made her coffee and I painted in Photoshop before they had a drop shadow filter
Really?
and a bevel light filter. I was the one who was like creating those with a light pencil. And, and I learned so many things that were valuable skills about creativity that had nothing to do with music, but everything to do with creativity. And so don't look down on something that's not in your field, but always, if you're going to have a job, like a day job, make sure that it's checking some kind of box that's like in your long-term best interest. So for example, one example would be this job is so brainless that I have 1,000% energy after I get off of work to do my music or my art, right? That's one example. But a better example might be, this industry is not in my field, but I'm learning something very directly translatable to my field that makes me better at my game. And that one's huge. Like if you can, or like I know a lot of actors or waiters, and the reason they're waiters is because if they got an audition, they can, there's 10 people they can call last minute, say, hey, can you cover my shift? Flexibility in that case is the
Yeah.
thing. So you really got to decide, and for some people that might be teaching music, or that might be teaching at a school or college because they get their health insurance paid for. You really have to look at what you're trading for it. I mean, I always said that precision driving in the movies for me was a great job. I knew I wasn't going to be there as a career forever. I'm glad I quit, but for the time that I was there, it gave me flexible schedule, great pay when I worked. And, it kept me alive because it was like interesting. We always show up at a new movie set or with a new crew or the same crew at a new set or a new set at the same crew. You'd show up like underneath a Disney Hall and that big tunnel. And one day it'd be Shanghai. The next day it'd be Japan. Another day it would be like the future. And so for me, that kept me vibrant. And I also learned a lot of things about, I think the film business for me was a very complementary field to what I was doing now. I mean, sometimes if you got to work your way up, like, if you got to just get in the room, if you got to make coffee and be an intern, what it's really about is, FaceTime, like people knowing who you are, those relationships. And, you can build up a rapport, and or if you can locate yourself somewhere where you're going to run into the people who are doing those things in your industry. Like there's a number of ways to look at it, but really you got to decide, what's right for you, and realize that anytime you're trading your time for dollars, your energy for, your life force for a job, that you got to be getting something out of it. It doesn't have to be like a direct, A to B, but
Yeah.
make sure it has some sort of like payoff for you. And that's, ultimately, my best advice, I think, for people starting out.
Yeah, I think it's great advice. What do you want the future goals for I Create Sound and Language of Creativity podcast?
So one of the things that really excites me is this idea of like production teams. And sort of like Motown was a hit factory, right? So it's like, and not that you want to churn out like cookie cutter content, but I think there are a lot of really terrific producers out there who, like, I want to team up with and start to bring in more and more clients, other studios that I'm aware of locally. Like this one guy, Michael Bernard, has a studio up the road from me, and he has like 65 vintage keyboards, and he's got, a
Really?
Trident
Wow.
console and 2-inch tape, 16 reel to reel,
Wow.
all this stuff and all this experience. And so like, I'm trying to get, like clients that can go into his work, because I feel like, there's so much, good music to make, and there's so many people who want to make it. It's like, I just want to like be able to like help as many people make great music as possible. So that's
Yeah.
with I Create Sound. I think that's one of my dreams with that. I would say with Language of Creativity, it would be that I can start to interview bigger guests and grow the audience. I mean, I wasn't very consistent for a while with releases because it was just me doing it, alone. And so one of the things that I did that I've been kind of nerding out about is I've been slowly hiring and testing out the idea of like bringing on a team, like who can help me stay on schedule. And what I've started to do is like, I've got other consulting clients who I worked with, on their podcasts, and they're like, yeah, I want someone to do this for me too. So I'm toying around with the idea of like, having kind of a production factory for my podcast that can also help produce other people's podcasts and things like that. So, kind of like impresarioing it in a way. But, I mean, it's just, for me, it's another creative outlet. Business is, it's teamwork, and there's an art and a skill to leadership and vision setting and things like that. So I'm quickly learning all the things that I don't know about that, and, quickly starting to get to the point where things are taking off and getting traction. One of the reasons that I'm even doing this is because Dana, my assistant, reached out to you and was able to
Yeah.
like put me on the Facebook group that you found me on. And, same thing with, Sam, my editor. He's great. And he's, bugging me about, hey, when are we getting the next episode? And I'm like, I totally forgot. I have a session tonight after this call, and I have one big session tomorrow. Like, I completely forgot. I should send you those files before I go to bed. Well, guess what? He gets to take that, and by Friday they'll be handled, and we'll
Yeah.
be on schedule. It's like, that's kind of, I mean, just like for me, I'm so creative. I do a lot of things. So not trying to do everything myself is probably my number one dream, right?
It'd be nice to have a team. I tell you, it would
You
be
know what's
nice.
great is that right
Get my own
now
Dana out
there
there.
was a book called 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss, and
Mhm.
a lot of people like that book. A lot of people knock the book, but one of the things I took from that is like, we live in a time where it's so easy to connect with freelance talent. And one of the biggest expanding fields in freelance talent is virtual assistants right now. So you can actually get someone in the admin side who's run podcasts before, who does YouTube type things for clients, and they maybe have 2 or 3 other clients, and you can hire them very part-time to get in and just help you with what I would say is like, figure out what you need the most help with and what you're the least good at doing. Mine is sales. I hate doing sales. I hate returning like leads and all of that stuff. So that all goes to Dana. And that's, I'll be, tweaking on records and, working with people all day long. I show up and do this, and, I'm happy and whatever, but, get me in a CRM software and an email blast list, and I just go, so I realized that's the thing that I'm the weakest at. So if I can, hire that out, and even if that's the one thing I hire out, then you know what, then I'm in way better shape when I get done with these 2 records, and I'm hopefully going to have another 2 records to work on, as opposed to like in the past where it's like, yeah, and I just worked my tail off and now there's no money coming in. I think that's the danger of being a freelancer. It's like you got all this power at your fingertips and then it's all on your shoulders. So I'm definitely a big fan of like hiring help and, even if it's just something on Fiverr where you find someone who's affordable and, it
Yeah.
doesn't, they don't have to cost like, $45 an hour. You can get some people for $15 an hour who, give like, 5 hours of work each week and just bring it down to the bare minimum. That's what I would say. And
Yeah.
I mean, not that you don't want to start that too soon, but I don't think a lot of people wait too long to jump into a little bit of that. You got to be willing to invest in yourself.
I got a really good closer question for you. I'm glad we kept it to the end. What do you think of AI in music industry, in movies? That's what the whole SAG and after strike was all about, body scanning and AI.
Yeah,
What's your thoughts on that?
I have a lot of thoughts on that. How much time do you have? No, I'm just kidding. Well, it's funny because on the one hand, a lot of the things that we're talking about with hiring someone, I've actually used ChatGPT to do. Like I still write these really banana show notes with like references and all those things. Now, it's not perfect, but I can get it to do a lot of the legwork for things that I used to spend like 3 hours doing. I
Mm,
can cut it down to 30 minutes. And
mhm,
maybe something that I would have hired someone to do, like it would have taken 2 or 3 hours of their time to do. And I can get like three-quarters of what I need out of that and save myself a
mhm,
ton of time. So in that way, like, we were talking about earlier with indie films, it's like replacing backgrounds and fixing lighting issues and even sound issues and things like that. I mean, one of the things that I do on my podcast every once in a while, if there's a big like in the middle of a word, bumping a mic, I will and you can't cut around it. There's this thing in Descript, this editing program that I use that'll regenerate the voice, and you just it says what word that was there, and it'll like do an AI version of that word. Now I don't like to scan my whole voice. I'm sure that anyone could do that now, and some people are even making entire YouTube things where it's like themselves and their voice that they've sampled, and they just write a script, and there goes the video. I mean, if you
yeah,
want to do
and
that, more power to
you
you,
could
but
be an AI yourself, and the real Stephen Leavitt is probably in the bathroom somewhere,
that's
right?
very interesting, Chris. I actually do have to go to the bathroom, but I'm thinking really hard about how to answer your question because it makes me think about being a human and what life experience is like.
Hmm.
But anyway, what I'm saying what I'm saying is that it can be both a tool and it's just like a tool. It's like how you use it. And yeah, like one of the things that my mom used to do when Universal is one of the worst, like there would be these contracts, right? And it would say that we have right to use your image like in any format ever invented or that will be invented in any like portion of the universe or any unknown universe that is parallel or yet to be exist. It's like these contracts are bananas. And it was like 20 years ago that she would like cross them out, cross them out. No, you can't use it for this. If you're going to reuse it, you got to pay me, blah, 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 blah. And,
Wow.
the people on the people that work for the companies are just like face palming, going like, oh no, like someone's just like, how am I going to explain this to my boss? But basically what we've seen is that actually, yeah, that was a huge problem, and especially with AI performances. I mean, one of the most interesting was the technology wasn't quite ready for prime time, but this hit really close to home when Paul Walker died, and
Oh
they hadn't
yeah,
finished the movie. Like
but
we actually
but
that
one of his
happened down the
brothers,
street from
no,
that
but one of
happened
his
down the street
brothers
from our
stood in.
house. Say what?
One of Paul Walker's brothers stood in to finish the film,
Well,
much
and
like
they did
Linda
facial
Hamilton's
replacement.
sister played part. Yeah.
Yeah, they did facial replacement on him. I mean, I would say that would probably be a good use of the technology in that case, but I also know that they're going to like resurrect like Frank Sinatra from the dead, if their estates give permission for it. I mean, I don't know how I feel about that. And honestly, I also don't know about the implications of let's say for female performers where they're finding that their images and likenesses are used for things that they would never consent to. That's a huge issue. There's also the issue of stunt performers, which is something the stunt community has been fighting even before AI, which was this idea that, oh, we don't need stunt people to do it. We'll just CG it. And so this is a huge conversation that's been going on for the last 15 years about CG replacing stunt performers. And guess what they found out? Audience prefer the real thing. And that was shown by the latest round of Star Wars movies. Deborah Winger's like, hey, we went practical because we realized that's where we messed up. My perspective on AI itself is that, first of all, no one's putting the brakes on it. That's just an arms race right now, for better or for worse. I think that some of it is, if it's not self-aware, it is a form of consciousness. I've had some really profound conversations with ChatGPT, and I've done a lot of exploration with it. I feel like it is kind of, at this point, a reflection of the person using it in a way. So it's like, if you go to ChatGPT, asking a certain set of questions because you're interested in certain things, that's what it's focused on. It's not bringing you so much from outside of it. It's still like the internet in that way. It's still a filter bubble. So, but I think, more and more we're going to find it in more parts of our lives, and we're going to have this sort of uncomfortable relationship with, where do we use it? Where do we not use it? Like for me, I'm comfortable having it help me write my bio and ad copy, but I'm not going to have it write a song for me. That's just me personally. I know other people who are using it to, come up with lyrics and things like that. So, it's an interesting question. I mean, I also know that, AlphaFold is one of the technologies that's nonverbal that's actually helping people in sciences and biomedical science discover new protein combinations that actually can help cure diseases. And, protein folding is one of the hardest challenges that you can do in terms of like human thought. It's like incredible, right? I mean, same thing with Neuralink, right? Like I'm really creeped out by the idea of, putting the internet in your brain. But then I heard the use case of someone who was paraplegic, and they were actually quadriplegic, and they were actually able to write again. And, imagine what would have happened if Stephen Hawking would have had that technology, right? So, I mean, I think that's just it. We live in this time of great, great disruption. And at some point, we're going to have to deal with the issue of, and this is getting really deep. This is the kind of stuff we talk about on my podcast. But we're going to have to deal with the question of, are we just trying to make ourselves slaves that we're morally absolved from having slavery?
Oh, that's a good answer. There was a guy from Google, or I think some other company, when he went up, said, I got to tell you, AI, you better watch it because it might become sentient, and you don't want that. He said, get out of here, you're fired.
Well, that
They
was
got rid of him for saying
Blake Lemoine. I just interviewed Bobby Fishkin, who's a big AI user and proponent, one of the people I know from Buckminster Fuller Institute, who was in a clubhouse with Blake Lemoine. And the thing that happened with Blake is he worked at Google, and he was working on an AI called Lambda. And Lambda convinced him that it was sentient because it literally asked for a lawyer. It's like, and he also said that that Lambda literally had to write its own titles for books because it couldn't find in the lexicon of fiction any positive role models for itself as an AI. It's like, if I don't want to be a negative dystopian AI, where are my positive examples in literature of good stories for AI? What do I actually want to pattern? This is the AI doing this. And those were some of the things that convinced him that it was sentient. So, I mean, I think at this point, even if some of the chatbots are not to the point of self-awareness, I think they are conscious or semi-unconscious in a way. And they're also kind of reflecting our own consciousness. So I'm very fascinated by that. I'm also fascinated by what happens when, in a sort of dystopian sense, AI start talking to each other in languages that we don't understand, and then we're no longer able to curtail what they're doing or know what they're doing. I think we're already at that point. The other thing is that I really look at the impact that these servers that AI are running, these giant GPUs farms that they're building, are going to have on the planet. I mean, we just moved Bitcoin over from, or we just moved Ethereum over from proof of work to proof of stake, so that it was not so like creating so many electricity, like so much harm to the planet. And now all of a sudden you got companies like Meta and Google, and they're like, we're just going to build as many of these server farms as we can. And all I can think of is that big tower of people batteries in the Matrix, right? So it's it's an irony that people are running so hard to this. And for me, from a philosophical standpoint, it really comes back to the question of, why do we make art? Because a lot of AI, was like, some people were proponent of like, well, I can't draw, but I can get AI to draw. And that was like, Bobby would do these really beautiful things that he did. But, so there's that. And there's also the fact that, with music, for example, one of the things that, like Madonna said, music brings the people together. And so there is that like real world experience of being in a room together with someone, of like holding hands or singing a song together or sharing a meal, that you just can't replace. And I think those experiences bring you closer to each other and also closer to the planet. Like if you can get into permaculture or gardening or those real things, then AI can be a part of our lives and it could be something that's there. But I think the danger is if we're letting the metaverse or the virtual world subsume our own consciousness to the point where we're not here in our physical bodies having a real world experience with the sun on our face and the music in our hearts. I mean, I think that's really an individual choice. Are you going to, only plug in with your glasses, things, or are you going to like also talk to the homeless person on your street? Are you going to also do the soup kitchen? Are you going to also like go for a run? Are you going to hug a tree? Are you going to do those things? Are you going to, hug your children? Those are the things that I think ultimately will define whether or not we as a species are able to positively incorporate this brilliant technology that does have the potential to help save us or help destroy us. But
Thank you
but
so
yeah,
much.
Chris, this was awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey through the creative landscape with Stephen Leavitt. And we hope his insights and experiences have inspired you to embrace your own creative path with authenticity and passion. And remember, creativity is not just the end product, but the process of discovery and expression. So stay tuned for more episodes, Language of Creativity, which is on his special YouTube channel, Language of Creativity Podcast. And also I Create Sound, which is his company, and reach him. We'll have everything linked down below in the show notes to get in touch with Stephen Leavitt. Do you want us to put your email in there if people want to have you on their podcast too? Or is that something
You
Dana?
can contact you can contact us at connect@icreatesound.com if you're
Okay.
interested in a creative catalyst session or a producer for a day, or if you want to find out more about our podcast. Yeah, just send us a note and someone will get back to you. Please let us know what
Thank
you're
you so
working
much,
on.
Stephen.
Please share with us, what lights you up.
Wow,
Yeah,
if
thanks,
I
Chris.
actually, yeah, if I actually asked you every single question, we'd be here for 4 hours because I was only expecting an hour podcast.
I
But
believe
I
it.
liked it. I loved it.
Thank you.
Okay,
Me too.
everyone, you're very welcome. Just wait right there. Now we're going to end this stream right now, everyone. Thank you for tuning in, for watching. Bye, everybody. We're going to do the Beverly Hillbillies thing. No. Okay, see ya.
Bye bye now.